Welcome everybody to the 2 days of the Baltic Sea, and welcome all of you that are on having breakfast and looking to this as we are streaming. My name is Gunilla Rosenqvist. I'm the leader of the Blue Center Gotland. The Blue Center Gotland is something unique for Gotland and Uppsala University because it's a collaboration between the university and the region of Gotland and the County Administration Board of Gotland, and we're very proud of that. The Blue Center Gotland starting out from the insight that water is the most essential resource we have for human life, and to tackle development issues related to water on land and coastal areas and the sea. Appearances are deceptive, as they say, and with the sunlight, actually today sparkling outside, and the waves lapping around our beautiful Gotland, it's easy to think that everything is well, but unfortunately, the reality below the surface is not as good as we sometimes think, and we have a duty to act. If we want the water to be the home to abundant and diverse life in the future, if we want to have clear water to drink, and then we have to take care of the Baltic Sea. This is a shared and complex responsibility and can only be solved in collaboration. This is why this network, like the Baltic Days, is so important. We are around 15 universities, corporations, business and NGO that together during the fall and the spring meet to discuss themes that are important to highlight. And this is our 6 years of collaboration. Baltic has challenges, but it has also a lot of opportunities for innovation, for blue economy, new food, energy, recreation. And during today and tomorrow, you will hear a lot about challenges, good examples, and also opportunities. And I'm very proud, and I also think that the start panel of today is very well qualified to start these 2 days about climate vision, what is the role for university on combating climate change. So I'd like to welcome up to the stage Matilda Ernkrans, Minister for Higher Education and Research, the Vice Chancellor of Uppsala University, Eva Åkesson, and Emma Norén, Chair, I'll do it in Swedish, Miljömålsutredningen, because the English name is totally impossible to say. And to lead today's dialogue, we have Keri Facer. She's a visiting professor at Uppsala University in a position founded by Niklas Zennström to climate change leadership. I'd like to welcome you all to the Baltic Days.
Thanks ever so much, Gunilla. So thank you, Gunilla. So our climate is changing. We're seeing this already. Climate change is not something that's coming up. This is something we are living through right now. In my home country, in the UK, we have universities that are declaring climate emergency. That's how they're phrasing it. And they're beginning to make real changes to their research, their education, to how they organise their buildings. And so today is a conversation, I hope, amongst a lot of us who have common and shared interests to productively think about what does a climate emergency mean for Swedish universities? How can Swedish universities better address the challenges of climate change? So I'm really happy to have all of us here today because I think between us we can fix it. It's not a problem. we got 45 minutes. We'll be okay. Before we get started, though, I'd like to invite Professor Åkesson with her view from the oldest Swedish university. What does it mean for you to think about how you reposition or respond to the question of climate change as a rector of such a significant university?
Thank you very much, and it's very nice to be here again at the Baltic Days, which started out 2013, and I think it was actually Baltic Week at the first attempt, but now working with the Baltic Days. And we do that together with many organizations that you heard before from Gunilla. Well, Uppsala University is determined to take a leading role in the transition to more sustainable development. And so are many other universities, both in Sweden and other parts of the world. And we are many that are united in our ambition to address the UN's 2030 agenda that formulates the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And to be able to address and achieve these goals, all disciplines and branches of knowledge must be involved, and they are needed. The concept of sustainable development is broad, and the challenges are complex. They encompass economical, social, political, technical, and ecological dimension, and they all have local, regional, and global aspects. Some of the challenges we are facing also concerns threat to democracy and open society. There are conflicts, migrations, and widening gaps. But in order to be able to take a leading role, a university like Uppsala must have the capacity to develop and also renew its education and research to meet the continuously changing conditions and challenges in society, but also in the world of work. That means both ensuring that our education and research environment have sufficient inherent power of renewal and creating also space for new and untested initiatives to emerge. And this is an active work constantly. When we talk about sustainable development, we have to remember that the problems that we face today are not the same as those problems that we will encounter tomorrow. This is precisely what we are obligated to prepare our students for. A full-scale, research-intensive university. Uppsala University is well equipped to contribute to sustainable development by its broad specialist knowledge in disciplines, and we have an excellence base that range across diverse fields from engineering and natural sciences via medicine and pharmacy to social sciences and humanities. And all these expertise and disciplines are needed together. The potential for new and innovative combinations of perspectives and also methods to approach problems, I would say, is virtually unlimited. There are fields that we address the climate, and I would just mention a couple of research fields. Energy, battery research is a hot topic right now. Wind power, that is a strong field here at Gotland, for example. Our peace and conflict studies is well known throughout the world. Our efforts on antibiotic resistance, we all know that the race of finding new antibiotics and try to find a solution that way, that race is already over. We have to work in different ways. And we also have Uppsala University sustainability initiatives. It's just some of the examples that is going on right now. So we do conduct education and research, and that through collaboration with external partners that translate into new knowledge, better technology, improvement in the organization of our society, and also change patterns of behavior. But to do what we're doing also means that we have to set an example how we ourselves, in the way we manage the finite resources and also actively addressing climate impact of our own activities. So what does that mean in practice? Well, I claim, and I quite often do, that our greatest contribution comes from our research, education, and collaboration. We educate leaders for the future, and by the education we give our students, we make the society more resilient. But everything we do has an impact, and we aim to contribute to sustainable development by our own operations. And one example, that is our buildings and workplaces and classrooms like this. So we are working together with Akademiska Hus. So we had made strict demands for Akademiska Hus. They own our buildings, and we have a newly signed ambitions agreement. Together we signed that this spring, and we had a follow-up meeting yesterday, and already for just a couple of months, I would say there are several activities going on, and also quite ambitious goals for the future. But that we have other that we rent from, and that is our own foundation management of estates and funds, and of course we put very same demands on them to find solutions that are in tune with the university's ambitious goal. It's quite easy to polarize ambitions regarding internationalization and to be able to contribute to a sustainable future. I'm very fond of, or like the way that Agneta Blad, she proposed a new sentence or phrasing in the Higher Education Act. And I would say in the way things or missions for the universities are formulated today, it's like tweets. We have one for internationalization, we have one for quality, we have one for widening participation, and so forth. And they are not interlinked. But the way he proposed a new law is to actually combine internationalization with quality and a sustainable development locally and globally. And I think that is a very good way and a holistic way to put it. And I think this is the way we should work. Because I strongly believe that close borders and isolation will not create a sustainable future for anybody. SASUF is a good example how internationalization is a part of the solution. Here we, together with 36 other higher education institutions in Sweden and South Africa, we have together managed to agree on an agenda for driving sustainable development forward by all of us contributing from our own position, how different though they can may be from the beginning. So we work locally, nationally, globally with the same agenda. And Uppsala has a long history of partnership with the municipality. And I'm convinced that the two universities in Uppsala have a role that Uppsala have been recognized as the climate city globally of the year 2018, and recently been announced as a climate municipality of the year here in Sweden 2019. And also news of development on a national level came just a week ago when the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences won funding for a major program in the area of environmental communication from MISTRA, the Swedish Foundation for Strategic Environmental Research. Here, Uppsala University are significantly involved through Swedest, the Swedish International Center for Education for Sustainable Development. And also, one issue on today's agenda is the state of Baltic Sea. Overfishing, ecosystem collapsing have had consequences that we cannot ignore. This is a shared and also a complex responsibility. So I'm very happy over these days that there are so many organizations that come together here and address these very complex issues, and we have done that together since year 2013. And as you heard from the introduction, that we are contributing for the Blue Center, which is taking substantial part of this responsibility. So this is just a couple of examples how we as a university, together with many other actors, are working in this area to contribute to sustainable development and a better world. And last but not the least is that you are here at Uppsala University, that we are very grateful that we have the Sennström Professorship in Climate Change Leadership at Uppsala University, and we can have renowned scholars coming to us and inspiring us here, and also share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you for setting the scene. You've talked about the difficulties of getting interdisciplinarity working. You've talked about cross-sector collaboration, challenges for how we educate our future leaders, practical projects, and also this very interesting question of whether we have to change policy from sort of disconnected tweets, I think he said, to real integration. And I hope that's what we can make a bit of progress on today. So let's start there. What I think is quite helpful is to start off by thinking, there are different agendas here. So let's just sort of put on the table where you two both think your priorities are for the next 5 years. So what is it that you're trying to do from the environment perspective, from the higher education and universities perspective? Let's just get sort of key priorities that you're trying to achieve, and then we'll work out how they mesh together, because they will. It'll be fine. Emma first. Let's go with environment first.
Yeah. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for being invited to this interesting seminar. I am the chair of Miljömålsberedningen, which is quite hard to explain in English, but I will try. But Miljömålsberedningen is a parliamentarian board with people, parliamentarians from all parties coming together on issues and assignments that we got from the government. And right now we have the small but very huge problem: fix the sea to December 2020. No, I should not joke about it, but we will try to get a strategy and a plan of how to actually manage the sea and making it better, because we know we have all these different problems. And it's not only the Baltic Sea, it's all the sea and marine life in Sweden. So it's very, very large. And we have into pollutants, overfisheries, as you said, management, and also how municipalities and länsstyrelser, regions, actually get the tools that they are needed to fix this. So it's to take science, what we know, and make politics out of it, and try to make that to a better way of managing the sea.
Fine.
And over all of this in a changing climate, or climate emergency, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have to meet and many scientists, and also try to listen and get into that. And when you look at climate, it's always predictions. We know that it's getting warmer and less salt in the water, but we don't know how much and in the time scale.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to trust things that we don't know to actually make laws and regulations today that will be fit for tomorrow. And there we have to understand what the scientists and the researchers are saying and be able to rely on that to actually make politics. And that's quite hard.
Yeah, so we're in a new world, really, aren't we? Because the thing is, with science and research, the habit is that you've got the evidence, it's already there. You're talking about effectively the past. And when we're talking about climate change, we're talking about the future. And we're asking people to make big policies on the basis of projections. And that creates a whole different set of dialogues and conversations. So, but you're going to fix the sea by next December. That's the challenge that you've got. Excellent. Right, Matilda.
At least we will have a plan for it.
Excellent. Good. Yep. Matilda, what's your big challenge?
Well, I have to say is, first, thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here, and it's a very, very important subject. So thank you for having me. And I want to say a little something on Emma's remark and also on the Vice Chancellor. because Emma is leading the Miljömålsberedningen, and I would like to emphasize this is a very important mission, and that the Miljömålsberedningen are doing, because before I was a minister for higher education and research, I was chairing the committee on education, but before that I was chairing the committee on environment and agriculture, and actually was part of Miljömålsberedningen. And the work that we did in that kind of constellation is what Sweden is. It laid the base on what Sweden now has decided, the world's most ambitious climate targets, that in 2045 we will have zero net emissions of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So it is, and we have a new climate law and so on. So it is a very important parliamentarian work that is being done in the Miljömålsberedningen. So I have very good hopes that this constellation will be able to tackle in a good and political successful way also this very difficult question, how to address the environment in the Baltic Sea. And when it comes to my role as Minister of Higher Education and Research, that of course the Vice Chancellor gave an excellent introductory speech on everything that the importance of our universities and what they can do and have been doing for very many years. I think since 1989 or something, the Swedish university has actually worked with sort of collaborating on Baltic Sea. And this is something that we need to emphasize and also continue working with, as the Vice Chancellor said, new solutions, methods, innovations, analysis, but also communication. And I want to add a little something to what the Vice Chancellor said, is that I think it's about leadership, because we also live in a world where forces that actually denies climate change and also denies science are growing. We saw it in the elections to the European Parliament, for example. And I think our universities, our scientists, our students, they have a key role in bringing, in sort of being bringing new knowledge based in science, but also communicating it in a way that actually gives protection to these kind of forces that actually denies climate change. So a little bit something. I think that's an important role for the universities as well.
I'd like to dig into that a little bit, actually, because Emma, we had a conversation last week, and you told me that you'd previously been an academic and now you'd become a politician. Do you want to just say a little bit about what happened in that transition?
Yeah, I'm a marine biologist, marine ecologist, and I have done my PhD studies, but I have 6 weeks left, and I had it for 10 years, so I don't have my hat or my ring. But I was working at the university, and after that I was working at the House Sea, a common aquaria, and was often used as an expert in different issues. If it comes a new jellyfish to the sea, they called me, and if there was someone who had found something or so, and I did children programs on TV and so on. But then I realized that I got to do something, and I went into politics. And when I said the same thing that before was fact, now it was my opinion. And it could be argued against. And then I had your old committee, Environment on Agriculture, and I have guided them, and they take home message, and now I was a part of it, and now when I said the same thing, it was an opinion that you could argue against. And sometimes there are facts, that could not be argued. We know how many ppm of carbon dioxide we have out there. We know if we have 1 or 2 different species and so on. But as nowadays it feels like if you're a politician, that you can always squeeze the fact. And I think that the last 5-7 years has been even more so. And you could also see in the election now in the European Parliament, and you see some of the world leaders out there. Yeah.
It's best not to talk about elections to European Parliament with a Brit. All I can say is you have no problems.
But there is a different where we have to have some facts that we are agreed upon, and then you make politics on it. But now you can also squeeze the facts.
So, I mean, this is something. So, one of the reasons for me coming from outside is that I can maybe see things slightly differently from a different perspective. One of the things I've noticed happens in Sweden is that academics who get involved in the public sphere, speaking in public, spending time doing that, can sometimes be called activists by their fellow academics who don't see this work as serious. They see it as not the real business of being an academic. And it's a very different sort of dialogue. In the UK, you have this notion of the public intellectual, and your job is to participate in public. And we also put funding in to support that. One of the things that a vice-chancellor once said to me is, how do you get academics to do things? Well, they're basically like cats. You move the bowls of milk around. So if you change the funding, you can make it possible and you can encourage people to do things. So I wonder if you could just have a little bit of a think, what sort of, could we put funding in, as we do in the UK, in Sweden, to support people, not just to get the next grant or to get the next research paper, but to actually spend time participating in public, talking to people? I mean, is this anything, Matilda, that sits under your brief? Is there, what do you think of that? Is it a crazy idea? Is it a reasonable idea?
No, it's not a crazy idea, and it's actually a very good idea. But I also want to say that this is something that our scientists and our universities, they have that, they want to take that role, and they also have that kind of mission to do that. But of course, I think this is something that we could look upon a little bit further in the future, how we can support that in a better way. But also I think Sweden and the government, we have also taken a very strong stand for more of open science. And I think that is I think that is something that will be needed for the future to make it easier to more people to get access to what our universities and scientists produce, but also in what I started with, that I think that we need to take on a leadership to actually bring out more knowledge to more people, because that is how we can. It's at least one way how we can fight climate denials or scientist denials. And I think we when I say that, I also need to realize that, as you said, if you're out there putting the facts on the table when it comes to climate change or other issues like if you have gender issues and so on, you can get quite hard. There are forces out there who want to attack you.
Yes.
So that is something that we need to realize and also address and take responsibility for, because we don't want scientists to be silent. We want to reach out even more.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm stopping because I know we've got limited time, and I know there's other people who want to join in as well. So Emma and Eva, then if we can just...
No, but I think that's a good idea. As you said, we had a talk last week, and then you said that in the UK, you can, when you get your grant as a scientist, you can also, in some fundings, also get money to actually communicate about it afterwards. And what I see here, that if you get your grant, you make your research, and then you have your paper out, you have so much knowledge there, and then you go to the next one. And sorry, all researchers, but maybe you put your article, your paper there and said, here, you know everything, and why doesn't anyone take care of this? I have done all this good things here, but you need to communicate. And as a politician or someone that decide, you probably cannot even understand the abstract because it's a totally different language. So you need to get this to get out.
Yeah.
And there are some universities here, Stockholm University have this with policy briefs, and they have they grant them themselves. And I think that we need to have this, because now when we have climate denial and all this, we need to help to understand each other and who to be trustworthy. And also we need citizens that are prepared for the world outside. We need to have a lot of knowledge as ourselves. If you look at now people knows about the pollinators.
I want to come up to this
sorry.
question of citizens and education in a minute. I also want to let Eva in, if that's okay.
Well, it's a complex issue, and I think it could be good to look at how does the reality look for the individual researcher. And many of them have to apply for funding over and over again, and I think, and also they are quite often counting publications and so we have a publication race to stay in the business that maybe not always favors interaction with the surrounding society. But at the universities, of course, we have to look at what we can do, our responsibility in part of this. And now we're trying to develop criteria and a merit system that take this more in account. But then also we have to think about that maybe it's not always the same person that is highly qualified, dedicated, and engaged can do the same things, to do everything, because they also going to work with innovation, have patents, and you name it. To be academic today, you're supposed to be excellent, I think, in 20 different fields or so, but I don't think we should go for that. That some people are excellent with communication, some people are excellent teachers and so forth. But I myself think you should always do education and research hand in hand, but you can have different balances in this. But
I think,
just one.
Yes, just one.
And what you were saying, to put a short memo or pixie version on things, yes, you definitely have to do that. IPCC, if they would have come with a full report and handing over to the politicians, we would not talk about the climate today. It would have I think 50, 100 years ahead we were talking, because they have been really good to put a very, very short, correct summary that is accessible for the majority of the people around us. And I think quite often we have to do this more and more, but maybe it's not the very same person that wrote the article that is going to make the pixie version.
Thank you. I mean, this is such a complicated topic. One of the things I'd like us to sort of slightly shift from as well in this field is the idea that we've kind of got the science. If we can just translate it into policy, then a new world emerges. I mean, there are really competing ideas about, for example, how we get our emissions down. We've got one option, which is we slap a tax on everything, and it affects everybody equally, except it doesn't affect everybody equally, because some people can pay and some people can't. So one of the things that I'm interested in is, how do we hold a public debate? What's the role of universities in facilitating conversations about how we respond to these issues, and recognizing that there are real inequalities in the world and real differences. My fear is that if we don't recognize those differences, some of the climate denial is tied up with populism, and it's tied up with a sense of, environmental law is just about elites doing things to the poor. So we have to find a different way to having this conversation. And for me, universities could be public spaces to support public dialogue. Matilda, any thoughts?
Well, yes, absolutely. And I think the more of sort of cross-disciplinary research or communication or whatever you call it that can be done on this matter is good. And I think universities can have that kind of role. It's something that, when I say you need to work more with sort of communication on the knowledge that we produce in our universities, this is something that we need to do better. But it's also something for the politicians. So that's why. Because I think you have to be very you have to be sort of, we have to have all the facts on the table, and this is sort of the role for the universities. But then, and I think the university can take a role in communicating it and cross-disciplinary, because that's what we need to get more of sort of science-based facts on how to get a good transition that people actually accept. Okay. But it's also up to the politicians, and that's why the work that Emma is doing, for example, in the committee on miljömålsberedningen, is very important, because that's where we try to balance different opinions and find a good path forward. And of course, being a minister is quite important as well.
Excellent. Glad you carry on being a minister. So we would hate to see something bad happen as a result of this conversation. So can I just shift us to the educational agenda here? So we have a whole cohort of students. We have young people demonstrating on the streets, and they're saying, I'm not going to do my master's course because the future is burning. I'm not going to go to school because the future is in crisis. What education should we be offering our students? And to what extent, does disciplinary-based education that doesn't talk about emotions, I'm giving you a leading question here, you may notice, that doesn't talk about emotions, that doesn't talk about the fear that they might be facing, and that often doesn't give them tools to act in the world, how adequate is that? So if you were to write your ideal course for Greta's generation, what would you want to see? Who wants to go first on that question? Eva, great.
It's not either or. Yeah. I must say that in many questions, because sometimes it sounds like if everything were cross-disciplinary, everything would be good. And also, if we get all the facts, then we will have the answer. We will never, ever have all the facts. We have to make informed decisions. And we also have to change your minds over and over again. And I think this is the kind of tools that we constantly have to give our students, that life, the future, will never, ever be easy, but there is hope. And we should give them tools that gives them a faith in the future and give them hope. But it will never be black and white. We will never have all the facts. We will never have all the answers. But we have to make as good decisions for the future all the time and be able to change your mind and to have this discussion together. Because working cross-disciplinary means that you have to have very strong disciplines. Otherwise, there's nothing to cross, there's nothing to put together. But we can be much better to provide arenas, both in education and research, for the dialogue, the questions, and the critical discussions, and to work more with the seminars early on in our education. Sorry, I get education.
No, that's all good. We like it. Frankly, a university vice-chancellor who is not passionate about education would be a problem. Right, Matilda and Emma.
I would say that I want everybody to do both, because education, without knowledge, you're not. It makes you easier for you to do this kind of informed decisions. So but I also want a young generation to keep on fighting for a better climate. But in my opinion, what the generation of Greta says to us is not. They say that we need to act. That must be our answer to them. To be better to actually take the political decision that is necessary, and also communicate them back to this new generation. And of course, and I think that's very wise of this of Greta and her generation to say it's not up to us to solve the problem. It's you who have to give us the solutions. You are in power, and we know that, and we're trying. And as I said, the Swedish Parliament and the Swedish government is taking a very active role in this, and we are an example within the EU and the world, and we have great ambitions, and we're doing quite a lot, I would say.
You are doing quite a lot. Excellent. And I think one of the, just to pick up on that in terms of the challenge to adults, one of the things that's happened in the last 30 years, I mean, I've been working in education a long time, and the story has always been, well, we must educate our young people so that they can fix the problem in the future. We have switched now. We are now at the point where the young people are saying to us, what are you doing? How are you demonstrating it? So one of the real challenges that I think we face is that as institutions ourselves, we can demonstrate we're not only teaching about climate change, but we are living it, we're breathing it, it changes how we procure things, it changes what we do on a daily basis. Otherwise, we get accused of hypocrisy by our students, quite rightly. Emma.
No, but education is the key to almost everything, and it's to have educated citizens is also how you build a society and also how to be a part of a society. And if you have educated citizens, you know that it's the best to a society, and it's also when you can create it more. But you have to work really in a young age, and you have to give them the facilities. I know that you used to say that Sweden didn't start to, what do you say about that in English? Sort the trash. Recycling. Before you had Tippen, the morning show in the early 90s, because then the kids saw it on TV and they learned about it, and from 20% or something it just exploded, because then they were teaching their parents. So I mean, and now we have this Greta generation out on the school and say, you have to fix it, why don't you do it?
So what's interesting about that is the idea that the education, or public education, doesn't just happen in schools and universities, it happens in a whole load of other places. I have to say the UK has a disastrous situation, which is that we expect people to pay huge amounts of money to go to university now. That means that universities are no longer trusted, they're seen as parts of elite organisations, and the education is not open to everybody. So please do not follow that example. Matilda, what were you going to say?
No, we have no plans to follow that example.
Write that down.
Well, you're already done, partly. Sorry to say, we have fees in Sweden.
For international students.
Yes, they're also students.
Outside
Sorry,
EU.
I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what you talked about when you talked about UK. You talked about the fees that actually citizens in UK are paying for the university studies, and that is not something that we have in Sweden, and we have no plans to introduce them. Yeah. I totally agree on you. I think the universities would have to take on, as I said, the Greta generation. They say that it's not we can't give you the solutions. You have to lead the way, the one in power. It's politicians, but it's also universities, as you said. University has to do their own homework, of course, as businesses, as public organizations and so on. That's how we lead this transition. But of course, university also will have a key role in producing new research, new methods, innovation, analysis, communication, and so on. So that's something that the universities they are doing it, and I believe that we can do even more cross-disciplinary and with more collaboration. But I also want to add a little something. It's if we want to build a society strong, of course education is a key issue. But at least in Sweden, we also know that we have to fix other things. That simple as you need to have you have to finish your school in a good way, and you have to have a work when you finish school, because that's how you build a good life for yourself and the one around you. And if you can, we also have to address that kind of security, because knowledge takes us a long, long way, but not all the way, because people have to have trust in that society actually can fix this. That is other things that also need to be done within the
One of the problems that happens quite often is every time there's a huge problem, we sort of throw it onto education. You know, we're talking about climate change. We're also talking about AI. We're talking about aging populations. We're like, well, as long as we educate everybody, it'll all be fine. It won't. We've also got all sorts of other things. So again, it's about, I mean, one of the challenges is making sure that our policymakers integrate and work together and understand that these are complex, related issues. I'm aware of time. I'd like to give you all just 1 minute, really, to say, just to reflect on Monday morning, next week, you get back from Almedalen and you're saying, okay, so how am I going to think about universities and their relation to climate change? What's the one thing that you want to see happening next year when we get back, when all the universities start? What's the one thing that you're going to think about? Who is ready with an answer to that? Excellent.
Yeah, always ready. Well, Monday morning. Well, actually, I will do this tomorrow. We have in between a couple of seminars. The management group. We will sit down because there's so many agendas and call just for climate change and sustainable development now. So we're going to put them all together in a comprehensive way and try to address them in a good way for the university, both students and people that are employed here. So we'll have a cohesive, I would say, program for how we're working with this. And that goes for, well, I mentioned about the buildings, but also how we travel and so forth. And our motto is that it should be easy to do the right thing. And I do not proclaim a leadership that is working with shame and blame. We preferred to have a strategy of the leadership at the university with nudging. So, and that means also to provide better video equipment and so forth. And here I must again praise that Gotland, Campus Gotland is a part of Uppsala University, and that became 2013. And that taught us so much of having a campus that is a little bit away from us, how to work with video equipment and other kind of meeting places. And that is still a learning procedure. But at 2013, it actually made a quantum leap for Uppsala University, and now we're going to take further steps on that road. So thank you, Gotland.
Can I just say, that's excellent. And also, well done, Gotland. I recently got asked to do a keynote in Mexico, and one of the things that I'm looking at is, can you do it via hologram? There is now, you can do hologram, very exciting. Anyway, Matilda, what do you think? One thing.
Well, I think I've said it. I think we need to, I'm actually very proud of a lot of the work who's being done within the universities, what the universities themselves are taking on in trying to change the way you work within the university, but also we have fantastic researchers on climate and environmental in Sweden. It's very good. I hope that I can bring about sort of a strong base on, as I said, collaboration, but also cross-disciplinary and communication, and hopefully I can sort of do that in a way that we can put that we can agree on within the political parties that now are governing Sweden. It's the Social Democratic Party, Green Party, but also in cooperation with the Liberal Party and the Centre Party, so that we can have, so we can give sort of good, solid base and ground for our universities to keep on in a good way forward.
It's fantastic to hear that universities are seen as a cross-party issue, not a political hot potato, which is so important because universities are going to be the engine to support our really critical thinking about the future. That's fantastic. Emma, one last thing. You're trying to fix the sea by next year. So what do you want to see?
If I could dream, I would like to have more things like this, more Almedalen. And more places, because Almedalen is not for everyone. But you can have a vice chancellor, you can have a minister, you can have, me, on the stage. And you can actually tie your dog outside and go in and look and listen for 45 minutes and go out again. To have these spaces where you can actually meet and not, it's quite hard to get into this otherwise. And if we could find these meeting points, there is not so high treasures. That would be really nice.
I think that's a really exciting point. And also one of the questions might be, where do we need to go? So we're inside the universities now, but maybe we should be in the community halls, maybe we should be in the civil society places to have some of these conversations so that it's easier to get over the barrier of entering these spaces that can be quite intimidating to some people who don't feel that this is their natural home. So I look forward to seeing all three of you in a community hall in future to have this conversation again. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Gunilla, for the invitation. I believe the Minister has to go, but we'll be here. We can have a bit more of a chat if people want afterwards.
Well done.